You're watching MMAnytt. Score! So we are back in Stockholm for another UFC event here in Sweden, UFC on Fox 14, and as per this newfound tradition, I am joined by none other than MMA Junkies, John Morgan, and Khorasani from Kammakaze TV, who, judging by the last video, is wearing the only shirt he has for events. And
I just had to be wearing the same shirt for the same video, right?
well, if it's on video, it doesn't lie. As far as I know, this is all you own.
Completely threw him under the bus.
Oh, man.
So, gentlemen, you're both back here in this wonderful weather here in Sweden for UFC on Fox 14. First of all, how are you guys doing?
It's good, man. It's good to be back in Sweden. I feel like we were just here not that long ago, you know, but it's definitely the coldest it's ever been here in Sweden. So the snow that's on the ground, I have never seen this kind of snow in my life. So, but it's been good. It's been good.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Sooner than we obviously expected. The last time we were here a few months ago, last October, we didn't expect to be back here so soon. But like John mentioned, very snowy, very cold. Actually, a funny story yesterday. So earlier today, it was announced that Luke Barnett is going to be fighting Clint Hester on the 4th of April in Virginia. And yesterday, we were kind of like walking up this steep hill with Luke, getting ready to do an interview. And I kid you not, he literally slipped on the ice, his legs were in the air, and had it not been for me right behind him to catch him, I don't think that fight would be taking place right now.
So you prevented an injury for a UFC fighter.
Absolutely, absolutely.
The fight was going to be canceled one day before it was even announced.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, this is a bit of a, we were here in October, but this is a little bit different, obviously.
Yeah.
Fox show, the first Fox show in Sweden, and they are ringing it in big time by having the event at the Tele2 Arena, which will be the biggest ever MMA event in Europe and the second biggest in UFC history. Do you guys feel a difference about this event? Is there anything different that you goes to show that this is a bigger event?
I'll tell you, it's honest. I mean, I think the one thing that feels bigger than that one is the fact that Alex is involved. You know, Alexander Gustafsson being a part of it. You definitely feel more of a vibe from the fans. And then I think the media, too. I mean, everything that we were at this week, people were getting coverage. But when Alexander Gustafsson walked out, every Swedish outlet is honestly crowded around him and the cameras pointed. So that makes it feel different. I'll be honest with you. It's kind of weird. And in fact, I talked to you about this earlier in the week is, from a European perspective, does this feel as big as it's supposed to? Because I feel like, honestly, from a guy that's, living in the United States and traveling over here, I feel like this card feels smaller than last week's card in Boston with Conor McGregor, just because the Conor overload in America was just massive. Everything was Conor, and it was like, all these preview shows and all this special shoulder programming to help promote this thing, and I felt like that was a bigger event. So I gotta admit, in some ways, I don't feel necessarily that the buzz has traveled over here from Stockholm, at least from an American perspective.
And I can definitely see where John's coming from there. And my response to that from a European's perspective is two things really. Number one is, like you mentioned, this is the biggest, or second, or the biggest attended event in UFC history here in Europe, second biggest of all time. So I think there's something to be said for fans that want to attend a UFC event from an experience factor. Like, we're going to have something in the region of what we've been hearing, about 26,000 fans in the Tele2 Arena. And they're going to be, drinking all evening, and the first fight is not until 10 p.m. Right? It's in an enclosed arena, right? And we know that the Europeans, the soccer culture here that we have, I'm sure they'll be chanting and getting into the spirit of things. So I think fans that have bought a ticket that are going to be coming to this event are going to be looking forward to the experience factor straight off the bat.
Yeah.
Oh, let's stop the press. We have another beer coming in.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And the second thing is, this is without a doubt arguably the best card we've ever had in Europe. If you look at some of the marquee fights, some legends like Dan Henderson, I think the Phil Davis, Ryan Bader fight is going to be fantastic. And of course, as John mentioned, because Gustafsson's involved this time, it just feels so much bigger, specifically here in Sweden. Him and Conor McGregor, without a doubt, two of the UFC's biggest exports from the European market.
All right, well, very good analysis, fellas. From the national standpoint, I'd say I've noticed perhaps it's a little bit bigger in terms of exposure because we got all the Swedish national channels covering it. There is supposedly tons of posters and flyers and stuff around town, but I don't know because all I've been doing is working since I got here. Apparently, there's a lot of promotion going around town. But some fans have been a little questioning of how much it's been promoted because a lot of fans were disappointed no open workauts. For example.
Interesting, yeah, there wasn't a lot of fan activities. You're right, and maybe that's part of the reason it just. I haven't necessarily felt the buzz. I haven't seen the public. You know, it was at the weigh-ins today, that was a nice crowd. Yeah. That was a nice sized crowd for. I've seen weigh-ins all over the world, and obviously that was a pretty solid crowd for a weigh-in. So I'm sure tomorrow it'll feel a little bit different. I have imagined once we get into the arena and we get the feel because we got to go to the arena to see it earlier in the week, and it looks like it's going to be a beautiful setup. So I'm pretty excited to see it happen. I just don't know if it's translating. I do know that one of the reasons this event was picked for this weekend was because back home in the States, there's literally no sports this weekend, right? This is that one break in the NFL season before the Super Bowl, so there's not a lot of, there's no NFL to compete with, which obviously, as you guys know, is just massive in the States. Yes, you've got hockey and basketball going on, but it's regular season, it's not playoffs. So I know that, the UFC wanted to kind of make a big splash on Fox, like let them be the centerpiece this weekend and let the world tune in and see like, wow, man, the UFC is filling stadiums in Sweden, man. This is a huge thing. So I know that they really want to make a splash with this event, and the card's good. I mean, I don't know that there's necessarily any fights that you're just like, I can't wait for this, and this is the one you have to tune in. You know what I mean? But some fantastic names. And I know sometimes the European cards, there's questions as to what, but there's some superstars there.
I mean, going on what you said about a fan, there's nothing being too much for the fans. I know what you mean by that. We were in Dublin last year, and there was tons of activities for the fans to get involved with, right? But having said that, I spoke to David Allen, who's the brand new senior vice president and general manager of the EMEA. And he told me, looking at the Ticketmaster analytics, there's 44 nations represented that are going to be in that arena. So a lot of fans that are flying in from around the world to be here. Like I said, it's about the experience. Maybe fans that didn't get to the Rogers Centre event in Toronto, for example. There's another chance to be in a big stadium. And I don't know if you've seen the pictures of this, but they've got a big Jumbotron that they've constructed that's going to be hoisted right above the arena. And in fact, again, speaking to David, he did confirm to me it's bigger than the one they had to construct for the Rogers Centre in Toronto for UFC 129. Wow. So that's saying something in terms of the presentation on TV and how things maybe will translate back to the American audience.
Yep. Well, it might be bigger than we think, and I didn't know this about the American football thing, the NFL, there was a gap. But I guess it's a good crossover because from what I've been seeing from American football players lately, martial arts and punching people in the face is right up their alley. So I guess this is a good continuation.
Oh, wow.
So with that smooth segue, let's actually move on to this card.
Okay.
Before we start off going through the fights, I want to know what do you guys think is pick one fight that's flying under the radar, the one that people should be sure not to miss, despite it perhaps not having the biggest, sexiest names.
I think good question. Because I think there's a couple of them. I've become a real big fan of Mairbek Taisimov. I think he's a real prospect that I think people need to be watching. I've become a big fan of his. Albert Tumanov, I think, is somebody else that maybe people haven't necessarily seen a lot of, that he's fantastic as well. But that Beal Siri fight, right? The first fight of the night, I think that's one that I haven't heard anybody talk about that I think could be a thriller.
I have to say, personally, I was blown away and really, really impressed by Makwan Amirkhani. This guy is just oozing machismo. The way he was dressed, some of the quotes he came out with. I mean, he's got his fight with Andy Ogle, right? And from a British MMA media perspective, we need all the kind of representatives in the MMA scene, especially in the UFC, to kind of really help grow the sport and kind of keep fans entertained from the UK perspective. But I mean, Amirkhani was a fan. I'll give you one of his quotes from this week. He said that Andy Ogle's going to lose and he's going to get cut from the UFC, and he's going to need to have Justin Timberlake play Cry Me a River. I mean, he's a little soft-spoken, but he's saying all the right things, and I think he gets it from the business and the entertainment perspective. So I'm looking forward to that fight.
Yeah, that's true. The way he says things, he's very soft-spoken, and he's very quiet, but he says things that, it's such a contrast to the way it sounds. It sounds like he's saying very nice stuff, but
it could very easily be Conor McGregor's words. It's just that he's saying them in the the quietest way possible. Politely and
in a way that it reminds me of Yoel Romero, just because of the contrast of what we're saying as opposed to what it sounds like. With Yoel Romero, it's the other way around. It sounds like he's Tony Montana, but he's saying like God bless you and stuff like that. He's not saying fucking cockroaches or anything.
Yeah, it's true.
All right, so now we'll move on to the fight card and you guys' picks and analysis. We're going to start off with the last fight on the undercard, Nico Musoke against Albert Tumanov. We'll start off with Sandu. What do you think?
Well, I've actually been really impressed with Musoke, so I'm going to pick him in this fight, and I think that it's kind of maybe helped him that his last fight was in Stockholm, and this fight's also in Stockholm. The fact that he can train locally, he's got that local support, so I'm going to pick him in that fight.
I'm leaning towards Tumanov. I think, like I just mentioned, I've become a fan of his. I like what he brings to the table. But the things you're saying are good. And the other thing, too, the weigh-in, I thought Musoke looked very calm and excited. And like he was really feeling it. I think that, he's going to bring a good version of himself. But I think Tumanov really is somebody to watch. So I'm gonna pick against the hometown kid here.
All right. Well, we know that Tumanov is good at first-round knockouts because his last 2 fights and I think his last 4 before he got to the UFC were first-round knockouts. However, one thing that we've definitely seen from Musoke is that he's good at riding out tough moments in the first round, which he did in his first 2 UFC bouts. And I just think he's a bit too well-rounded. I think he's just slightly sharper, crisper, and I think he's probably going to get a decision win over who I think is a really tough and underrated opponent.
I agree.
First fight on the main card, Akira Khorasani versus Sam Sicilia. John, give us your thoughts.
Tough one to pick here, too. I mean, I think this is a very evenly matched fight. I went back and forth on this one a lot in our staff picks for MMA Junkie. Ultimately, I lean towards Sam Sicilia. But, Akira Khorasani, obviously a fun fighter. Somebody that likes to get in there and trade. Sometimes I worry about his chin a little bit and I worry about him making mistakes. So I'm leaning towards Sam Sicilia, but I think this is going to be a fun fight. It could have been one of those that we just mentioned that maybe isn't getting the love that it should because obviously everything's started on the main event. And it really could be a fun fight. I think it could be a back and forth war. But I kind of like where Sam Cecilia's head at and talking to him. And again, I have a couple of questions about Akira. So I went towards Sam Cecilia on this, but it was a tough one, man, because Akira's a fun fighter to watch too, and I think he's got all the tools to win this fight as well.
There's an interesting note at the weigh-ins earlier on today. Nico Musoke got a fantastic pop from the crowd. Gustafsson obviously did as well. But we were talking about this earlier on. When Khorasani came out, it was a little subdued. There wasn't the kind of fan reaction you'd expect from a Swedish fighter, right? And he tried his best to play up to the crowd, and he was wearing the colours and all that, but it just wasn't happening. So,
do you think it was just because he was so calm too? Like it was, you know what I mean? It was kind of cool. It was like this stoic pose. Like he just kind of looked like he was soaking it in. Like, man, here I am on the stage, in this big arena. I mean, we weren't in the arena, but it was a big venue. It was. I don't know. It kind of looked like he was sweet, but I wondered because I saw the same thing you did, that he really didn't get that pop, and I just wondered, and maybe you can weigh in from a Swedish perspective. Do people not consider him Swedish, or I don't know what it was?
Well, that's not the problem, because I read the comment sections on our website, and first of all,
mistake number one.
Yeah,
mistake number
I know,
one.
right? But for first off, he's moved to the U.S. He's living there. Some people see that as okay, well, he's kind of taking a stance or whatever. But a lot of people, they still kind of hold a lot of stuff from The Ultimate Fighter against him, where they felt that he, behaved immaturely and such. And even though I asked him about this in my interview with him, and he said, well, like, okay, well, I spent, X amount of weeks there, and they didn't show the times when I was comforting a fighter who lost, or, missing my girlfriend or anything like that. They didn't show that stuff because nobody wants to see that. They only wanted to see when he was kind of messing around. And he said he's an entertainer. He wants to entertain.
Right.
So, but that doesn't always go down well in the Swedish culture.
Mirsad Bektic got a bigger welcome for wearing the Swedish.
Yeah.
He wore a Swedish jersey and got a bigger welcome. He's like, he's Swedish. He was just playing to the crowd.
The cheapest pop of the night.
Yeah, right.
Honestly, that's a scandal. Swedish fans, step up your game. That's not cool. That's not cool. All respect to Mirsad Bektic, but that's not.
Maybe
cool.
it was because Mirsad actually had the Ibrahimovic jerseys, like he went further. Whereas, Akira's it just said Sweden on the back. He didn't have.
But he still had the number 10 shorts, and that's Ibrahimovic.
That's true.
So.
That's true.
We're going back to a prediction. I'm like John. I'm like, this is so like a pick 'em fight, flip a coin, whatever. I might be slightly leaning towards Khorasani, just thinking that when the fight happens in the arena with 25,000 fans, that might just give him the extra 10% to kind of really pull through and win that fight. So.
Yeah, I think like it's a very evenly matched fight, and I'd say style-wise, or at least judging from what we've seen from Akira lately, style-wise, it's very similar as well. Even though I do think that Khorasani has a definite advantage on the ground.
Right.
He has a very underrated ground game. I mean, he's got a submission win by scissor choke. I mean, you don't see that often, but it's definitely there. And I think that will just kind of pushes it over the edge for me, because I do think that Sam Sicilia is a very good opponent, experienced guy. He's had some tough fights. I mean, I think he's looked good even in some of his losses. But yeah, I think just the ground game is what tips the scale for me. But that brings us on to light heavyweight bouts.
Fighters. You picked 2 Swedish fighters, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I bet you guys have no idea who I'm picking for the main event. No, light heavyweights, not the main event, but on the main card, Ryan Bader, Phil Davis, or as some people in the comment section are calling it, the Hugging Fest. Sandu, what do you think?
Well, I tell you what, going into fight week, I was kind of picking Phil Davis. I think he out wrestles Bader, maybe get a submission decision, a submission victory there. However, coming into fight week now and spending some time with Phil Davis, he looks a little bit weak. He looks a little bit sick. I don't know if the weight cut had anything to do with it, or whether it was a jet lag or adjusting to the time zone. I just don't know what it is, but something seems a little bit off with Phil Davis for me. Whereas on the other side, Bader, he's happy, spending tons of time with the media, really media friendly. He looks healthy, he looks good, he looks powerful, strong, and I'm actually going to change my prediction on that one. I'm actually going to now say that I think Bader's going to win that fight, and I think it'll be a decision, but I think he'll get his hand raised there on that one.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I came into fight week not knowing. I mean, and listen, this does have the potential to be a boring fight. It could be. All right, now I'm not saying necessarily will be. Sometimes when you have 2 wrestlers, obviously it cancels each other out. They end up, you know, swinging and trading. Yeah. Or it could be, you know, a very grappling heavy fight. But here's what I think. Ryan Bader, I really honestly feel like has been putting things together. I think a lot of things are going well for him. And as you said, I mean, he's been in a fantastic mood. He's really been, you know, but I think he's getting better as a fighter too. And I think that's one of the reasons he is so like more mentally strong and confident and all those things. He's just growing up, and I think he's getting better as a fighter, to be honest with you. And I will say the same things about Phil Davis. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But, you know, some of the guys have had trouble adjusting to the schedule. They're trying to get themselves on. We did an interview with him on MMA Junkie Radio, and it sounded like he was asleep, to be honest with you. Like, just, you know, it sounded like extremely tired. Because he's, you know, when he gets going, he can be pretty entertaining. And it was just, you know, kind of out of it. Then when we saw him at the media day, noticed that his eyes were a little bit bloodshot, and he was sniffling a little bit and things like that. And it just kind of made me think, like, is this guy sick? Like, I think maybe he's a little under the weather right now. So now, maybe he's sick and still comes out and fights like a badass. We could be reading too much into that. Yeah, but in what I consider a pretty evenly matched fight, you know, because of the types of skill sets that we, you're looking for anything you can. You're looking for anything you can to differentiate. What's going to give him that one little edge? Yeah. And, man, I just got to give the edge in intensity to Bader. So I'm picking what I think is like a 2-1 underdog at this point right now. I think, you know, I like the upset as well.
Yeah. Are we all 3 picking upsets on this?
Really?
Well, the thing is, like you guys, I was pretty sure on Davis going into this fight, but one thing that I like to do when it comes to Phil Davis's fight is that I like to judge his coming performance based on how big his shoulders look at the weigh-ins, and they just weren't as big and muscular as they usually are.
He didn't even do like the full lat pose.
Exactly. If I don't see that flex, I'm just not sure if there's the energy. You know? But that said, I do think technically Davis is the better fighter. Right. But you guys are bringing up some very good points on just external factors that could affect this, and I'm so like for me this is like a flip a coin fight, and because I'm an indecisive bastard, that's exactly what I'm going to do for my pick. I'm going to flip a coin. Let's see here.
This is the science.
Yes.
This is the expertise that we bring to the table.
Yeah. All right. Heads, Davis. Tails, Bader.
All right.
Davis.
Oh, all right. Well, there you have it.
All right, so co-main event. 2 former Strikeforce champions, 2 real veterans. A very exciting fight in the middleweight division. I don't think a lot of people are expecting this fight to go the distance either. Gegard Mousasi, Dan Henderson. Sandu, start us off. What do you think?
Well, you know what? Against Shogun, and me and John were speaking about this earlier on, Hendo looked bad. Until that H-bomb landed, he was looking bad. Yeah. And it started to look as if maybe age and time had finally caught up with him. And I have to say, spending some time with Mousasi this week, I think everything's just changed for him. I think his mind is right, his mental state. He wants to fight, he wants to finish, and I really believe that. His demeanor, everything about him just tells me that he's going to go into this fight and he's going to look for the finish and he's trying to get done early. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think he's going to finish Dan Henderson, and I think he'll get done maybe in the first, second round. Yeah,
it's funny. As you said, we were having a talk, and I'll never forget sitting cage side for that last fight of Dan Henderson with Shogun. And in my head, I'm already writing the Dan Henderson retirement story. You know, as the fight's playing out, and I'm watching it, and I'm thinking, man, this is the last time Dan Henderson's ever going to fight. Like, it's over. You know, and then obviously he does have that tool. One of the few people that has a tool that can change the course of everything in 1 second. So you can never count him out. And I will say this too. I think I lost about 7 picks in a row picking against Dan Henderson because I'm like, oh no, this is the guy. He can't be this guy. Is good. So the guy's always proved me wrong, but I do feel like this might be a little bit too much right now. Going back down to 185, how's that going to affect it? It's funny though. I mean, Dan Henderson, we were laughing at. He moves like an old man. It's just his body has been through so much.
So
he shuffles his feet. They kind of he doesn't really walk. He just kind of shuffles his feet because but then he comes out and he has that tool. But I just think Gegard's a little bit too much right now, man. I really do. I think Gegard is in peak form. I think he's admitted the struggles that he's had. Motivation, training, dedication, all those things. But look to be in great physical condition, as you said. Seems to be mentally strong and prepared as well. And I think Gegard's just a little bit too much right now. He's on a nice little run, and I think he's going to pick up a big win for himself.
Yeah, my thoughts are very similar to your guys'. First of all, it was a Shogun fight, and then the Cormier, I don't know what's called, the slaughter. Yeah. It was tough. It was like watching a horror movie where you see Jason Voorhees is right behind these two teams making out. You know it's going to happen, and you're just anticipating it. And then eventually, he got choked out. Mousasi, he's had some ups and downs in the UFC, but it's been against really tough guys. I mean, Jacare is no joke. Machida, obviously, I mean, he's gonna be a legend in a couple of years. I mean, he's accomplished a lot. Sure. And I'm wondering, like you guys, how much time does Henderson actually have left? It was really cool meeting him for the first time on Wednesday at a media day, and he's really cool, always nice.
Very humble, soft-spoken, kind of. Everything's real simple. It's like, you try to ask these complicated questions and make up storylines because we got stories to write. And he's just like, yeah, man, I'm just coming to fight and lay on this right hand.
I don't even think it's a lack of motivation. He's still talking about getting a run to go for a title. Yeah. Like, there's no lack of motivation on Dan Henderson's side. It's just, does he physically still have what it takes to compete at the very, very top level? Mentally, he can be there, but physically, we'll see on Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you guys. I'm thinking that Mousasi gets it down on the ground, submission win.
Yeah.
Probably midway through the fight, something like that.
Just got to be careful, man. Again, Shogun. Yeah. Shogun looked like, that was the best. Shogun has, we all know Shogun's had his struggles as well, but that was literally one of the best fights that he's had in recent times where you're like, oh my gosh, he's putting it all together. He's moving well. And I wouldn't even say he made a mistake. He just got careless in a transition. And got clipped. Yep. So, anything can change. So, you can never count Dan Henderson out. If somebody's saying, I want to throw a little money on an underdog, it might not be a bad one because he can change the fight in 1 second. But I just think Mousasi's too much right now.
Yeah, I know. And I'm a huge Shogun fan, so I cried myself to sleep at night. Main event, the big one. This is a one that's, judging by what we've seen and heard, this is going to grant the winner of the next title shot. Alexander Gustafsson against Anthony Rumble Johnson, or Humble Rumble as people are calling him now, because he's a nice guy.
He's a nice guy.
I want to invite him over for dinner. It's like
it's amazing what happens when you don't have to cut weight anymore. All of a sudden you're a lot more pleasant, right? When you're not torturing yourself to somehow make 170 pounds.
Oh man!
All right, so Sandy, what do you think?
Well, it's funny we talk about the co-main event about Dan Henderson having that right hand. Johnson has that in abundance in both hands, right? He's got power in his left and right, right? Yeah. But I think that's all he has to offer. Where I think Gustafsson's has got so much more tools. That he's got great footwork and speed, and he's very technical, and he's got a great jab and like a hook. He's got so many tools, and I think that's gonna be way, way more than enough. He's got the height and the reach advantage, and he's got the home crowd support. He's fought here before, and I was asking a few of the guys. this week to let me know what they thought about, you know, potentially the crowd maybe being too much for him. But the kind of responses they gave me is kind of what I, you know, think now too. I mean, he's fought in big fights before. He's fought for the title, for God's sakes, and he's fought in Stockholm before. So I don't think anything to do with the Tele2 Arena with 25,000 fans is going to affect him whatsoever. And I do see him, you know, taking care of Johnson pretty easily and getting it done maybe in the second or third round.
Interesting. You know, it is. I'm leaning towards Alex as well. I mean, I've put my pick out there, and I'll say a lot of the same things. Obviously, I think the movement and the speed and the footwork that he has, I think that's going to be proved problematic. I mean, Alexander Gustafsson knows he can't stand in front of Anthony Johnson. He knows that, you know. And if you stand in front of him, you're going to pay. But I mean, again, you know, we talked about what Henderson can do in a moment. I mean, man, Anthony Johnson's last fight against Little Nog, I mean, I felt like I was watching a snuff film, man. I felt like I should call the police and report the crime. You know what I mean? Like, that was just uncomfortable. And but this is obviously a completely different opponent. I mean, I think going into that fight with Little Nog, we kind of all knew what the anticipated result was going to be. This one, I think Alexander Gustafsson is really a truly elite level fighter. Obviously, you know, the fight with John Jones is what everybody talks about, how incredible he looked in that fight. But, you know, he's been developing for a long time. I mean, you guys have obviously watched it firsthand. He's really developed into a complete fighter. And when you add the type of body that he has, you know, the range that he has, and then using that, you know, Alliance MMA, Dominic Cruz, you know, movement in and out, you know, and mixing it all up, I think that's going to be, it's going to be, you know, proved problematic for Anthony Johnson. Now, again, will not count Anthony Johnson out. The power that he has, again, a guy that can change things in one moment, you know, and certainly exciting and powerful. And if for some reason, especially early on, you know, in that first round, but you got to think Gustafsson knows, hey man, I've got 25 minutes. I don't have to be in a rush. Let me stay. That first round, let me stay away. Let me move. Let me see if get Johnson tired a little bit or what have you. So I'm leaning towards Gustafsson. I don't know if easy strikes me a little. I mean, I guess if he's doing everything right, it will play out that way. But I do think Anthony Johnson is very, very dangerous early. But I think Gustafsson gets this done, and we get to see the rematch that everybody wants.
Yeah. Just one small note on that. The reason why I say it's easy is because he took care of Jimmy Manuwa really easily.
Yeah.
And the way I personally view Anthony Rumble Johnson is just a bigger, better, more powerful, more technical version of Jimmy Manuwa, who's got tons more experience.
Yes.
But I think in the last year, even though he hasn't been active, I think Gustafsson's just improved in all areas. He spent time in the gym and got his wrestling better, submission. He spent some time in San Diego, and you know, we talked about his footwork as well. So I think seeing a better version of Gustafsson than we saw last February at the O2 Arena against Manuwa is why I think that it'll make it look so easy.
Yeah. And he, you know, again, you always factor in, I guess he did have to travel, but this is his home turf. I think he feels comfortable and he feels good over here. And, will the hour affect him? I mean, they're gonna be fighting at what, like 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, whatever it is. So it'll all be interesting. But I do think Gustin is the real deal right now.
But we've been here fight week, and he came in straight from San Diego, so the jet lag is what he wanted coming back from San Diego, and all week he's been up until I think 6 in the morning sparring and doing training at night, and then going to bed and then getting up for media duties about say 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, right? So I think he'll be well adjusted to the time zone.
Yeah. Well, without talking about his sexy body like John was, I think Gustafsson, he's got a lot of advantages here. I think that first of all, the reach. It's hard to discount it. We've seen how John Jones just dismantles people with his reach. Yeah. That said, like you guys are saying, I think the first 2 rounds are going to be very dangerous for Gustafsson because Rumble just really needs to connect one time. I mean, I think he can knock out Cain Velasquez on the right night if he just gets his momentum going and gets in the right combinations. But it's hard. It's hard for him to statistically be able to get in that punch that he needs, especially when Gustafsson's footwork is as good as it is. He's so good at keeping fighters on the outside of a range that he wants them to. We saw that, like you said, in the fight against Jimmy Manuwa, where like the only real threat was when he got hit with a body shot, but he kind of got out of that pretty quickly. Yeah. And then when it comes to wrestling, like admittedly, Johnson, he wrestled in what was it, high school?
Yeah.
But even though, still today, Gustafsson took down John Jones with ease twice, not once, according to what the UFC stats said. Because I don't know. Last time I checked, when you get your opponent down on the ground through wrestling or a trip, that counts as a takedown, but apparently not. So
And he's training with Phil Davis, you know,
And training with
who's
Phil
an
Davis.
elite level wrestler. So I'm sure his wrestling has improved leaps and bounds since the last year as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that the first 2 rounds are going to be dangerous, but the moment it reaches the third, that's when Gustafsson is going to really pull away, start dismantling him, picking him apart like he was a cheap electronic device made in China, and just maybe 4th, 5th round gets in the
late TKO.
Yeah, late TKO to just cause the Tele2 Arena to explode.
So we're looking at a 6 a.m. finish then.
Yeah, most likely. Well, for us, with a press conference, it's going to be like an 8 a.m. finish with the delays.
Brazil does not feel sorry for you, I assure you. They have to do it all the time, so
fair enough.
Don't look for sympathy.
All right, so gentlemen, any last parting words for our viewers who are going to be, hopefully, be at the arena tomorrow?
Yeah, overall, man, I hope people show up. If there's still tickets available, I would go. If you're a UFC fan, if you're even a remote MMA fan, like casual interest. I know it's late at night and that sort of thing, but I mean, this has the potential to be pretty cool. I mean, obviously, I'll never forget, being in Rogers Center. 55,000 people. That was amazing. There's certain venues. Obviously, being in Dublin this summer was incredible. I mean, there's certain nights, venues, dates that are just really cool. You know what I mean? It's not just, obviously the fights are great and we're truly anticipating that, but sometimes it's the event. You know what I mean? It's the moment. And I think we're hearing probably 25,000 or so, but maybe it could get up to 30 depending. I don't know how big of a walk-up crowd Stockholm is, but I guess I would just say, like, if you're on the fence, go do it, man. This is going to be one of those nights, you're going to see it and be like, damn, I wish I was there. Like, be there, soak it in, experience it. You know what I mean? I think this is one of those special nights.
Listen, I'm going to echo everything that John just said, and I've been saying it all week. These are the kind of events that have that experience factor. If you're a hardcore MMA fan, you're going to turn up regardless because this is a great card, especially by the UFC here in Europe. But if you're a casual fan and you just want a good night out, right, and you maybe have a few friends that are MMA fans and they want to drag you along, get dragged along. Go along. If it's your first UFC event, hey, this could be like one of those memorable nights of your life where it may turn into a fan of MMA. But like I said, like, I'm looking forward to just being cage side and being surrounded by 25,000 fans, seeing how loud it gets. Because I think since Dublin last July, I think there might be, especially here in Europe, I think we're going to start to see certain markets and countries, like we talked about earlier on, the Scottish crowd. Yeah. I think everyone's now saying, hey, look how loud the Irish fans were. Let's represent. Right? So we may see that from the Swedish fans. And let's not forget, by the time the main event rolls around, it'll be, what, 4, 5 in the morning?
Maybe a cocktail or two may have been consumed along the way.
Maybe, right? So, and depending on how the fights go, of course, like, if there's a decision, 5, 7 in a row, then it might just kill the vibe. But it all depends on how things play out. But potentially, it could get really loud in there. Like, we were both here, actually, for the press day when they launched it, right? And when Gustafsson and Johnson were just hitting pads, it was the two of them. The echoes around the arena, it was like cannons going off and gunshots, and that's just from hitting pads, right? So can you imagine 25,000 fans in there? It could get potentially really, really loud.
Yeah, I'm very much hoping to be asking what
after
the event. Absolutely. So you guys better step it up because that's what I want. And the way I see it, I mean, if I can sit up till 5 o'clock in the morning playing StarCraft, people can go to an MMA event. I mean, come on, people. It's not that hard. It's not that demanding. You guys are getting a lot of bang for your buck. Well, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure, and for those of you who have short memory spans, this was Khorasani from Kammakaze TV and John Morgan from MMA Junkie. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.